Let's talk about conditional statement in Python. Conditional statement helps us check if certain conditions are met, and when they are met, we are aware in our code and we are able to perform or execute a line of code as far as that condition is true. And if that condition is not true, we are able to find out and we are able to handle that and perform another execution if we want. So we have the if conditional statement, we have else, and we have elif. So for if conditional statement, let's say we want to create a variable, say name equals to Python, maybe a programming language name. We can print that to be sure everything is check. We have Python. So if we want to check if name variable is equals to Python, print yes. So if name variable is equals to Python, print yes. If you click run, you see we have yes because name variable is actually equals to Python. If we check if name variable is equals to JS and run this code, we'll have nothing because this condition is not true, so it's not running this code, and that's it. But if we want to now handle when this condition is not true, that is where else comes in. So we can say else, we can do the else condition by saying else, and then we put any function we want to perform when this condition is not true. So we can print no here. So if this condition is true, run. This condition is not true, don't run this, run this. So if we run our code, you see we have no because name is equals to Python and we're checking if name is equals to JS. So if we put Python back and run our code, you see we'll have yes because name is equals to Python regardless of our else statement. So this only runs when this condition is not true. But if this condition is true, this is what runs. So we can have as much code in here that could execute if this condition is true, and we could have as much code here that would execute if this condition is not true. So that is how if and else statement work in Python. In a situation where we need to check for multiple conditions, that is where elif comes in. Let's say we want to check if name is equals to Python, and we also want to check if the same name is equals to JS. If it's equals to JS, still print yes. And if it's not equals to JS or Python, then print no. We can use the elif for that. So if we use elif, if we check for this condition, if this is not true, it will run. If this is not true, then it will now finally execute this line. But if this is true, it no longer checks for this and this. It just stops here and breaks out of the if conditional statement. But if this isn't true, it comes here and check for if this condition is true. If this condition is true, it doesn't check for any other condition again. It doesn't come here as well because this is already true. So it helps us catch for a single condition when we are checking for more than one condition. So in this code now, we have a variable called Python. We are checking if name is equals to Python, run this. If this runs, if this condition is true and it's running this, it will not get to this part of the code. It breaks out of the if after running this. If this condition is not true, it comes in here and check, and if this condition is true, it runs this line and it doesn't run any other line anymore. But if this condition is not true and this is also not true, then it runs the else. So if we run our code now, you see we have yes because Python name is Python and we're checking if name is Python. So this is true, so we're running this. If we put JS, you see we have also yes because it's printing this one. Let us say yes Python, yes JS. So if we run our code, you see we have yes JS. So it's printing this guy because this one is no longer true. It comes in here to print this guy. So because this condition is true, that is why we're getting this. If this wasn't true, then we would have executed the else block. So let's say we want to check equate this assign name to PHP, and we are checking if name is Python and JS. If it's none of these, then print no. Full on our code, you see we have no. We can also handle conditions completely. So let's say we also want to check if name is PHP. If name is not PHP, we can now say no programming language found. So we're checking if name is Python, if name is JS, if name is PHP. If it's none of these, then print no programming language found. If we assign name to PHP and run our code, you see we have yes PHP. Assign it to JS and run our code, you see we have yes JS. Assign it to Python and run our code, you see we have yes Python. For assigning it to a language like Java, if it's not any of the conditions we are checking and run our code, you see we have no programming language found. So elif is useful when we need to check for multiple conditions, and if one of the conditions is met, do not check for any other condition, just break out of the if conditional statement. That is when you use while loop. So we can have as much elif as possible. We can check if it's PHP, we can now check if it's Java, and we can check if it's assembly. So if we run, we can come here and say assembly, come here and say Java. So if we run our code, you see we have yes Java because this is Java. And when we put assembly on our code, you see we have assembly. But if we put a language like C sharp and run our code, you see we have no programming language found because not counted for it, or will not check if we have C sharp for any condition here. So that is all about if conditional statement, if elif else. I'm seeing you in the next video.